Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Taback,
Aleichem
who's
Shalom.
down south in South Africa, Johannesburg to be precise. And I've gotten to know Reb Ari a little bit. And we're zeich and fortunate to be able, for at least for Yavamis, to be able to share his beautiful shir. He has a project or a program called Daf Academy, which he'll talk about a little bit, where he's been saying wonderful shiurim with different ideas and sharing different visuals as he says this year. And we're happy to be able to share that with the All Daf audience as we move into Yavamis. So, Shalom Aleichem, Reb Ari, how are you?
Aleichem Shalom. Doing great. Baruch Hashem.
Okay, so maybe before we begin, give the audience a little bit about your background. Are you born and bred South African, or you're a recent import?
Yeah, I'm born and bred in South Africa. I grew up here, and I learned in Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. I also was in Kollel in St. Louis, Missouri. My wife comes from St. Louis. We then went back to Eretz Yisrael, where I learned in Kollel. By Rabbi Aryeh Zilberstein, the grandson of Rabbi Yashiv. We had a Kollel, and then also learned by Rabbi Berkovitz for a period of time. So done the rounds, but essentially South African, yes, as you can probably hear from the accent.
Beautiful. Okay, so why don't you quickly fill in some of the blanks, I guess, some of the things that people may be wondering about. What is Daf Academy? How Daf Academy begin? And what are you doing currently?
Great. So I gave Daf Yomi for the previous cycle, 7 years. Baruch Hashem, we had a Chabura here in Johannesburg of about 10, 15 people who joined us, in the previous cycle about 9 years ago. And we went through the entire cycle together. At that stage, the cutting edge technology was Dropbox. So I would record my shirim in audio and then share them with people. And that was very exciting for people that they could pick it up anywhere in the world. Coming to the end of that cycle, I was looking at other tools and ways to get the Daf Yomi out. And simultaneously, and it was really a hashkacha, was obviously the arrival of COVID. And there was a big hashkacha for me in that I established myself and set myself up with an online platform just at the end of 2019 going to 2020 for the new cycle. The way my shirim work actually is I do have a live audience. I have a Zoom connection that's active while I'm recording the actual shir in the studio. And we do have questions, although sometimes they're trimmed out. But for the most part, we have a live audience, and simultaneously we're recording the shir. I think the novelties of the shir are that it's multifaceted. There's myself, but we're putting me in the corner of the screen, which kind of is symbolic of the fact that I feel like the Maggid Shir can stay out the way a little bit and let the Gemara speak for itself. And let the illustrations speak for themselves. So simultaneously, I'm sharing my screen both with the Zoom audience as well as with the recording with people that are watching online. And that screen has a lot going on. There's a lot of dynamic content, which I think makes the Daf Yomi experience just that much more rich and accessible. I feel that Daf Yomi I call Daf Yomi the triumph of realism over idealism. In a sense, the amount of material on a single daf of Gemara, everybody knows. I have sons in yeshiva, they can spend a week on a daf or even more. And yet we've got this 1 hour, or in modern times it's becoming smaller and smaller. We have to try and find a way in that hour to maximize and get the most value. Now, I call it the triumph of realism over idealism because so often people say it's not the best way to learn. And then 6 months later, when they've been busy with some other program, and I ask them, how's it going? And they say, no, that program ended and he hasn't quite found something else. So Daf Yomi is really the most realistic way of people engaging and learning consistently every single day and embracing and soaking up the Torah that's available.
Excellent. So, the Baruch Hashem, there are many, many Daf Yomi Shiurim, Daf Yomi Magidei Shir, online, offline. Many of them have unique talents. Many of them have unique ways of sharing their talents, their educational talents with their audience. What would you say if you had to highlight 1, 2, or 3 points of what you bring from Daf Academy to the world?
I think some of the things that we're aspiring to achieve in this program is, firstly, I think that it is an English-based shir, so I really believe that the language is so critical because, as Volby used to say that a person should master at least one language, whatever language it is, because language is the tool that allows you to communicate the most subtle things. So I think one of the features of our shir has been expressing things in a very clear English, and not using necessarily the sprach, the yeshivish terminology, which may be foreign to some people, but at the same time not compromising at all on the depth of the learning, using the subtleties of the English language to express the subtleties of the lomdus. I believe that the definition really of lomdus is clarity. It's just about defining things with the right level of accuracy and precision, and if one has the right words for that. So that's, I think, one feature. And our oilam, the people that have joined our program, come from a very broad range, ranging from people learning in Koilo and Yerushalayim all the way through to people who are complete beginners or people who have no background whatsoever. And I believe that if a concept is explained clearly enough, then it should be accessible almost to everybody without alienating anybody. I think that's point number one. Point number two is a philosophy I have that words are the enemy of ideas, which means our brains work with ideas, and words tend to overwhelm our brain, especially the side of our brain that's able to really think deeply and laterally. So if it's just a mass of words, which you have to get through in Daf Yomi, so then it's a great challenge to really not get bogged down in the words. For that end, I tend to use slides on the screen, and they're dynamic slides, which means that we're changing them all the time as I'm speaking. And what that really does is it tries to avoid using words. So whenever there's a concept, I'd rather use an icon or a picture for that particular concept. Even if it's Natilas Yadayim in the Gemara in Chagiga, just to put hands there, because it's fascinating that if you write the word Natilas Yadayim in English or in Hebrew, those are another two words that your brain has to get stuck on, whereas an image, our brain is just so much more comfortable with. So try and use as few words as possible. Rabbi Yehuda Nossi wrote the Mishnah in that way. Rashi, the greatest teacher ever, certainly of the Rishonim, who was so makpid on his words and speaks so often about keeping one's words sharp and tight and crisp so that the ideas come across. But I think perhaps coming into Yovamis, the third point I'll make, and that's perhaps the most important, is because we have such limited time, in that 1 hour we're going to cram in an entire daf. In Yovamis, there is so much information on that page. We try and distill it and crystallize it into simple slides, which are progressive, which means one of the challenges of pictures, for example, in Yovamis is, I can show you a family tree of someone's great uncles, aunts, nephews, something else. And if I show you the whole thing at once, then your brain just goes into overload. What we try and do is, as the sugya is developing, actually let the picture develop. And my experience is that people are incredibly bright. Even someone who's not so familiar with the language or hasn't got so much Gemara experience, if the information is presented to them sequentially with the right background, so people can follow. So I'm very excited about Yavamis. We have some great resources and diagrams and progressive slides and notation. I feel notation is very important to create symbols for certain things, but that are easy for people to follow. And really, I'm excited to be learning Yavamis together.
Okay, excellent. I don't want to keep you too much longer. What would you say in closing is what gives you the excitement to be able to share your shir on a large platform with a large audience, unlike Oldaf?
I'm excited to meet new people, as funny as that is, because these platforms tend to be one-way relationships. But at the same time, I really enjoyed engaging with the people that contact us, that email us. There's all kinds of formats that we can engage with people. But to connect with people, to connect over the Holy Torah, I think that's the highest form of connection. So I'm very excited to meet new people and to learn with new people. So Be'ezras Hashem, looking forward.